Welcome to the distancelearningcentre.com. This is an online class that's going to be an introduction to the course. What this session will cover. So we're going to have a look at a few different things. We're going to have a look at how to navigate the website. We're going to have a look at how to plan out your studies and also how the course works. So let's start off by having a look at the distancelearningcentre.com website. Now, this is the gateway for everything that you're going to need whilst you're on the course. So when you log in, you'll come to this page, and this is kind of the bit that's got a good chunk of information in general that you might want to know straight off the bat. Okay, so let's point out a few things. Now, if there's any things that you need to do for us that are kind of essential, things like uploading your ID, then a little message will appear at the top until you've done that. So keep an eye out for those, because those are kind of important, urgent things that you need to do for us. So if any of those appear, please do that straight away. Another thing as well that's really important is your target completion date. Now, your target completion date is when you're aiming to finish everything on the course. So all of your kind of fees and everything are determined by when you've set the time that you want to finish your course. Now, if you want to finish a little bit sooner than what's written there, all you need to do is contact your tutor and they'll be able to amend that for you. That's not a problem. Now, you are paying for 365 days on the course. Okay, now whether you use those 365 days is entirely up to you. A lot of students do it quicker than that. We've got quite a few start in September and go until June, which obviously is not the full 365 days, but that's when they need to finish if they want to start university in the September. So you are paying for 365 days, and we also have an indication on there as to how many days you've used up so far. So for this student, they've used up 5 of them so far, because they're starting new as well. Another important part is the My Fees section. Now, this gives you all the details about when your fees are coming out, how much it will be each month as well. Now, your fees that you pay monthly, they are spread out over the period of time that you're studying. So remember that target completion date. If you decide you want to do the course in a shorter amount of time, then it means that your fees would change so that that full amount is paid by your target completion date. And just so you know that we can't put your results to the moderation board unless you've paid up all your fees and completed all the work. So that is actually quite an important date to make sure that you've got it right. We'll talk about deadlines for moderation boards later on, but just to make you aware of that. So if you click on that little expanded menu there where it says show future fees, you'll have things like the moderation board registration fee in there with the date that that will come out. So it's definitely worth having a look at that as well, just so that you don't get caught out. And then we've got a couple of other things as well to highlight on here. We've got the toolkits, and we've also got the My Courses drop-down menus. Now, those are probably the 2 things on this page that you're going to click on the most. And we'll go through those in a second. Now, a couple of other things just to mention as well is if at any point you did want to pause your studies, now that is absolutely fine to do. We call it a study break, and it's for a minimum of 1 month up to 6 months. And then when you get to 6 months, we'll just get in touch and see if you're ready to return. So to do that, all you need to do is just contact your tutor with when you would like to return to the course. And in terms of your tuition time, what happens on a study break, it would just pause, your fees would stop coming out, but you'd also lose access to the website as well because you're on a study break. So for instance, if you took a 1 month break from the course, then your studies would be spread out over 13 months. So it might take you longer than a year to do it if you have a study break in there. And you also have the option of going longer than the 365 days by paying a monthly extension fee, which you can contact Student Services to discuss. Okay, so let's have a look at the toolkit drop-down menu. Okay, so that blue bar at the top, and the toolkit one has lots of very handy things that you will need during this course. Okay, now one of the things that is essential for you to have a look at, don't try and skip this step, is the student handbook. Okay, now the student handbook, it has absolutely everything that you need to know about the course. It is a bit of a beast. There's a lot of information in there. So grab yourself a brew and have a look through. We've also got some little questions that we like you to answer just to make sure that we know you've had a look through. Cannot emphasize how important that handbook is. Please have a look at it. Now, another thing in there that I would definitely say you should have a look at right now is the UCAS application section. Now, if you're not applying for UCAS this year, I would still advise you to have a look. If you are starting the course and you think it's far, far away having to do your application for university, I promise you that time will disappear very quickly. So I would suggest right now at the start of the course, you have a read of that section. Now in the UCAS application section, it's got so many resources in there that will help you. It's got all the deadlines that you would have to meet. Most UCAS applications have to be in by the end of January. And if you want to apply through us, which we are more than happy to do, and we would recommend, because we check over your application with a fine-tooth comb and can also write you a reference. It talks about how you can apply with us through DLC, and we ask for you to submit your applications a few weeks before the official national deadline, just so we've got a chance to have a look at it and go through it properly with you too. So please go and have a look at that section as well. Write down the key dates in your diary just so you don't miss it. A couple of other things to mention in here is the library. Now in the library, we've got loads and loads of resources to help you with your assignments. It's a gold mine in there, especially if you feel like you can't find anything for your assignment via Google. Have a look in the library. Using Turnitin, every assignment that you hand in, you have to submit a Turnitin report to show that it is all your own work, that you have not copied it from another student or from the internet, and you haven't used AI to produce your work either. So for every piece of work you submit, you need to submit a Turnitin report as well. And there is a very detailed guide in there that tells you exactly how to use it, what it is, and it includes all the class IDs and passwords that you will need as well. So please have a look in there. Just mentioning that bit about copying from other places. Now that's known as plagiarism. Okay, so please have a look at that section as well that talks about plagiarism. It's worth having a look in there just to make yourself familiar with what the rules are, as well as the Totem NUS card as well, which can get you discounts on things. So go and have a look in there as well. That's definitely worth it. This drop-down menu is the one that's called My Courses. So if you click on that, you'll see this menu appear. Now, this is probably the one that you're going to click on the most on this screen, because this is where everything for the course and the units that you're going to be doing will be, and where you upload everything as well. So let's have a look at a few sections of this. Now, the materials and assessment section, this is the big one. So in there, you have all of the resources that you need for every single unit, as well as all of the assessments in there too. We're going to have a look at that section in a bit more depth in a second. Another thing to look at is the moderation dates. Now, moderation dates is where we 3 times a year sit down with the moderation board and we go through all of the grades and all of the work that you've handed in, and the moderation board has a look and goes, yep, we agree with that. Or they might make a tweak here or there. Very rarely do they do that, but sometimes they make a tweak here or there. And we do that 3 times a year because that's when they issue the certificates. So we do it in November, in March, and in June. So if you're looking for a September start at university, then the latest you can submit everything is for the June moderation board, and it's got all the deadlines in there. If you're looking to start, some of the courses that start later in the year, so January to March, some universities have an intake then as well, then November would be the latest that you could submit your work for. And then the March one, that's just a chance for you to submit everything and get your certificate way ahead of time. So that's a great time to get everything signed off as well. So the moderation dates, please have a look in there, make a note of the deadlines. Those are deadlines that cannot be moved, okay, because they are set by the moderation board. So please make sure you have a look in there and decide when you're aiming to hand everything in. For those of you that are looking to apply for September 2025, the deadline for the June moderation board is the 30th of May 2025. So you need to make sure that you hand everything in by that date. It doesn't need to be marked by that date, but everything needs to be submitted by then so that we've got time to prepare it for the moderation board. And then another thing to mention as well, which hopefully you found, is the webinars tab, because you're in this session. So the webinars section of the website has a list of all the upcoming webinars that we've got. So if you would like to join live into one of our Zoom sessions, then you can absolutely do that. All the links and everything and times and dates are there and the subjects. And we've also got all the recorded webinars that we've done. A lot of them will talk you through the assessments and give you tips and tricks. And students will ask questions during those sessions as well that you might also have that could be answered in those webinars as well. So I would highly recommend that you have a look in there. Now let's have a look at the My Courses materials and assessments section in a bit more depth, okay? So like I said before, it's got absolutely everything that you need for the unit. So if you click on My Courses and then Materials and Assessments, you'll come to a screen that has these two buttons. Now these two buttons, one of them goes to the materials, which is all the resources that you need for the course and for the different units that you're going to be doing. And then the other section, which we'll look at in a bit, is the assessment section. And that's got all the paperwork for all of the assessments, the actual things that get graded. So let's start off by having a look at the materials section. So when you click on that materials button, it will take you to the materials section of the website. Now, there's a lot of things in here for you to have a look at, but I just want to point out some important things that you're going to need in there as well, and things that will be really helpful for you too. So one of the things that lives in there is your individual learning plan. So we'll talk about this a little bit more later on, okay? But your ILP, that's where you're going to find it, in the materials section. Now, the study skills guides, these things are amazing, okay, because these will help you so much with your studies. There's lots and lots of different help in there. Just to highlight a few of them. Now, the Using IT one, now that one, you might think, I'm on my computer, I know how to do this. Some people might not, they might be a little bit sketchy with technology, so that's definitely one for them to have a look at. But there's also a few little tricks in there as well. So for instance, you can only upload files of a certain size to the DLC website. So when you have a file that maybe has pictures in, so in some of the maths units or the accounting units, you might need to show you're working out. Now, some students like to do that by hand and take pictures of it and insert it into a Word document. That makes the Word document file really huge. So in this Using IT guide, we've got tips and tricks on how to shrink the file size so that you can upload it to the website. So it's definitely worth having a look in there just to give you some ideas as to, you know, the help that's available there for you. Another one is understanding grading. Now, grading, we all know that you all want distinctions, and it is absolutely possible, and to help you as much as we can, we've got a little guide in there that tells you about the grading and how it works, okay? So it's really worth having a look in there as to, you know, what you've got to do to get your merits and your distinctions and not just scrape through with a pass. Another important one as well is how to make sure your work is ready for marking. Now, this is one of the bugbears of tutors, okay? When you hand in a piece of work, there is a list of things that have to be done so that we can add them to our marking piles. So if it's not ready for marking, we have to send it back to you. You have to make the changes, and then we have to check it again. And if you still haven't done it, we have to send it back. Nobody wants that back and forth. You guys just want to hand it in and it be done and dusted. Okay, we totally get it. So please have a look at this Ready for Marking guide. It will tell you everything that needs to be on there. So it'll tell you about the dates, make sure you've got signatures on there, that you've referenced things, that you've got a Turnitin report, like I mentioned before. So please have a look at that Ready for Marking section, Study Skills Guide, because that will tell you how to get your work accepted the first time that you submit it. And then, as I mentioned before, we do, with the Turnitin report, it checks to make sure that you haven't copied from anywhere, whether that's another student's work or a website, and also whether AI has been used. Now, AI is very tempting to use. It's incredible what it can do, but it cannot write your assignments for you. The Turnitin guide will tell us if you tried to do that. So please have a look at the Academic Integrity Guide for students. In there, it will tell you everything you need to know. okay, because we want you to get the best grades possible. And for those of you that are applying for medicine, now the deadline is coming up very soon for that. We are in September now, and I believe the deadline for medicine students is in October, but there's also additional guidance in there for you if you're applying for a medicine degree. Now, as you scroll down the materials page, so this bit's at the top that we've just gone through. Now, if you scroll down, you'll find the list of the different units that you're going to be doing and the different resources that you need. They are grouped by subject, so everybody starts out on the study skills units. Now, those study skills units, there are 3 of them that you'll do, but it's also got other groups such as psychology, biology, accounting, and the different units that come over under those subjects. So it is organized like that. Most people will start on the interview and application skills unit, which is study skills unit. And so we're just going to have a look at this one because most people will encounter this and give you an idea as to what is available to help you with that unit. Now, the unit specification in there, it's got everything that you need to get a pass as a minimum. So that's what you need to do to get through that unit, the things that you need to demonstrate, the skills and that kind of thing. So you can have a look in there. Where it says interview and application skills topic 1, in there is the materials for the unit. Now, the materials is basically a mini textbook that we've written specifically for that unit. So it has absolutely everything that you need in there to be able to do the assessment. If you are looking to get things like merits and distinctions later on, we would expect you to do some additional reading around the subject and not just rely on the materials. If you did just rely on the materials, you would definitely be able to get a pass. But if you're looking for the merits and distinctions, please do a bit of additional reading as well to help you towards that. As you go through the materials, there's little questions called SAQs, and there's an answer sheet for you to put your answers onto. And we've also got in there the answers for the SAQs, the SAQ exemplar answers, which you'll use to mark them as well. And we'll talk through that process in a little bit. But everything you need is right there. So unit specification, the little textbook, the materials for that unit, the answer sheet, and also the answers for those SAQs as well. And each of the units is set out in a similar way. Now, just to give you the heads up as well, some of the units have more than one set of materials. So for example, those of you that are studying psychology, Introduction to Psychology or Approaches to Psychology, they actually have 3 sets of materials that you need to go through and answer questions on and submit. So just to give you the heads up, most of them just have 1, but be aware that some of the topics, they do actually have more than 1 set of materials, so keep an eye out for that as well. So that was the materials section of the website. Now let's have a look at the assessment section of the website. Okay, so again, you would click on My Courses, Materials and Assessments, and you would click on the Assessments button this time. So the section we just looked at, the materials, it's got everything you need to learn about that unit. Okay, all the information that you need. Now, the assessments live in this area. And these are the things that your tutors will mark. So it looks very, very similar to the materials section. So you would scroll down again and you would look for the unit that you're doing. So again, we're looking at interview and application skills right now. You would have a look at the assessment TAQs. So the assessment TAQs is a document that tells you exactly what you need to do. We give you so much guidance in there as well. There's links to podcasts, to webinars, to websites that you might want to have a look at, so suggested resources. So what I always say to students is before you try and do the assessment, read that document from start to finish. And also there you will find the student answer sheet. Now that answer sheet, it has all the official paperwork that you need to fill out for that particular assessment. So make sure that you go through and you fill it all in for us. Things like signatures, dates, that kind of thing. Again, if you have a look at that study skills ready for marking guide, it will tell you exactly what you need to do. And if, for instance, it has one of the assessments that you have to do, it's to complete a table. On the answer sheet, you will find that table for you to fill in. If it's label a diagram, you will find a copy of the diagram on the answer sheet for you to complete. So please make sure that when you are doing the assessments that you do it on the student answer sheet. Right, so let's talk about your ILP. Okay, now, like I said previously, you can find a copy of your ILP in the materials section of the website. So you click on My Courses, Materials and Assessments, and then click on Materials, and it will take you to the materials section. And if you scroll down a little bit, it's got your individual learning plan, like you can see on the screen here. Now, your ILP, your individual learning plan, that is tailored specifically for the course that you are on. So the one that we've got right here is for the social sciences pathway, option 1. Okay, so if you're doing anything else like business and accounting, it will have the ILP specific for the pathway that you are on. So what you do is you click on it and you download it. And what it is, it's a Word document that lists off all the different units that you will be studying throughout the year. And this thing, it is not set in stone apart from the moderation deadline that you are aiming for. Okay, so on here, what you're going to do is you're going to put in when you would like to submit each of your units. Now, please note that some of the units are 3 credits and some of them are 6 credits. So it's not as simple as dividing the amount of time that you've got by the number of units, because some units are bigger than others. Okay, so please keep that in mind. So you would put your deadlines in, and this is to make sure that you stay on track, okay, for your studying. Now, we have a rule that we want you to complete 45 credits 6 weeks before that moderation deadline, okay, to make sure that you've got enough time to submit everything in time for that moderation board. Now, if you haven't got the 45 credits 6 weeks before, then we'll look to move you to the next one. Okay, so please try and aim for that 45 credits 6 weeks before the moderation deadline. There might be a bit of wiggle room on there, but you'd have to talk to your tutor about that. Depends on individual circumstances. So you go through, you put your dates in, and it can be moved around the dates that you have put in there. Okay, apart from that moderation one. So if, for instance, you become poorly for a couple of weeks, you get COVID, or you have some sort of work crisis, I don't know, anything that could come in and derail your studies, then you can always go back to your ILP and update it with new deadlines that you're going to be aiming for. The idea is you don't have a last minute rush. Okay, we always get this coming up to moderation deadlines. Some students have kind of maybe not moved as quickly as they should have earlier in the year, and there is a little bit of a tsunami that heads our direction of marking. Now, that is so not a good thing to do, because the last thing you want is to get everything in on time, really rush it at the end, and get your diploma, but not get the grades that you need to get into the university of your choice or the course of your choice. So this ILP is designed to make sure that you're pacing your studies throughout the year. You pop it up on the website for us, and your tutor will set you a standard deadline. And most go for 3 credits. We normally give you a 2-week deadline. For 6 credits, we normally give you 4 weeks for the deadline. Okay, but it's still your responsibility to make sure that you get your studies done by the end of the year. Using your ILP, I have to emphasize it is important, okay, especially if you're looking for the merits and distinctions that you're after, because you want to be able to pace yourself as much as possible. If you can build yourself in a little bit of flexibility towards the end, maybe have a couple of weeks spare, then it means that you've got a chance to have extensions on pieces of work if you need to. If there's a unit that you start and you go, oh my goodness, what is this? You would have that flexibility to be able to spend a bit more time on those subjects that you find a bit harder. You might have subjects that you find really easy, that you're really happy with, and you can crack on with. So, you know, you might go quicker than you expect, but that again gives you a bit more wiggle room later on. So have a look at your ILP. Put some deadlines in. If you're not quite sure how to do it, then you can always have a chat with your tutor, and they'll give you some tips as well as to how to divide up your time. and make sure you keep it up to date because it is important. So just to cover the main points on that then. So it's in the materials section of the website. It's a plan for the course whilst you're studying. It's a list of all of the different units that you're going to be doing. Check with your tutor the order that you're going to do them in. Okay, this is an important point. So for instance, the student that I have here, she's one of mine, and she's starting on the study skills units, and then it lists English as English language and literature and the units for that one, and then psychology. Now, students stay with their tutors until they've completed all of that tutor's topics. Now, I do not do English language and literature, but I do the study skills and the psychology. So the student would do the study skills units with me, and then jump over the English to the psychology ones and do the rest of the units that I do with her. And then she would be passed on to her next tutor to complete the remaining units. So just double check with your tutor what order you're going to be doing them in. And also have a look at the end date that you're aiming for as well. Okay, because that will determine how many days you should be spending on each unit. There are lots of different awarding bodies for different qualifications throughout the UK. If you've done things like GCSEs, you might have seen on your results slips things like EdExcel, AQA. Those are the big ones that do GCSEs and A-levels. And the one that we use for the Access to HE diploma is an awarding organisation called Ascentus. Now, these guys have been around for ages. They specialise in Access to HE diplomas, and they're recognised across the country by all universities as being a provider of Access to HE diplomas. All of the diplomas in the country are set up in exactly the same way, and that's that the first 15 credits are ungraded. So they're either achieved or not achieved. So the reason it's structured this way with the ungraded credits, they're the first ones that you'll do, the study skills units, and also any introduction units. And they're to kind of ease you in. So we try and give you as much feedback as we can, and we say, right, this unit is just achieved, but if it was a graded unit, you would have got a merit. This is what you need to work on when you get to those graded units to get solid merits or distinctions. So when you get to those graded units, which are the remaining 45 credits, they are graded at pass, merit, or distinction grades. And hopefully by that point, you've had enough feedback to go, right, okay, for instance, my spelling was rubbish, and that's why I only got a merit in my piece of work. So I really need to focus on my spelling before I hand in a piece of work to make sure I've got the best chance of getting distinctions. So the ungraded units, they're a bit of breathing space at the start, and they still count towards your diploma. You do still have to complete them. They're not optional because you need that full 60 credits. And it gives you a chance to have some breathing space to get some feedback. So when you get to those graded credits, you've got the best opportunity to get a pass, a merit, or a distinction. Now, in terms of the ungraded units, it will be the study skills units that you do at the start, and any units that have introduction in the title, because it gives you a chance to get back into learning how to write essays and that kind of thing with the study skills units and how to research and that kind of thing. But also with the introduction units, it gives you a little bit of a chance to get your head around the subject you're about to start as well. So any study skills units or introduction units are ungraded. And then the graded units, like I've said before, are at pass, merit, or distinction. Make sure that you have a look at the grading standards for how you can achieve those pass, merits, or distinctions. And there is a study skills guide that talks about the grading standards. And like I said before, we're a little bit cheeky because we pretend that those ungraded units are graded, and grading standards are actually in those units as well, so you can have a look at them, get a feel for what they're like. So when you get to those graded units, you can go, grading standards, I know what they are and I know what I need to do. Now, a couple of other things to have a look at as well, to mention, is that there is no overall grade for the Access to HE diploma. Okay, so you will get your access to HE diploma, but it won't say whether it's an overall pass, an overall merit, an overall distinction. And like I say, that's exactly the same for every access diploma in the country. So don't think that you're at a disadvantage if it doesn't say a grade on it, because it's the same for everybody. What happens is you will get a certificate saying that you've got your access to HE diploma, and you'll also get a transcript of all the different units that you completed, along with the grades that you got and how many credits each of those units was worth. And that's what the universities will have a look at as well. Now, it's your job to find out how many of those credits you need at a merit or a distinction. What a lot of students will find when they're researching their universities is it will say on their website that they accept the access to HE diploma. Great, but when you get made an offer for a place on the course, they will ask for more information about your access course. So they will say, it's absolutely fine, we'd love to have you on our course, but we're making you a conditional offer. And that condition is that you have 15 credits at merit and 30 at distinction, because remember, there's only 45 credits that are graded. So it's your responsibility to get in touch with the unis and say, what kind of grades are you after as part of the diploma? So don't just rely on, if I've got the diploma, I'm in. They will be after specific grades, and they might also be after additional things like GCSE English and maths. So it's your responsibility to find that out as well. The highest offer that they can make to you is 45 credits at distinction, okay? Because remember, only 45 credits are graded. And they might say specific credits. So they, like I said before, they might say 15 credits at merit and 30 at distinction. Or they might say something called UCAS points. Now, what UCAS points are, remember, you apply to university through UCAS. And UCAS points are a way that universities can compare all the different qualifications that are out there. So they put specific points for grades on particular courses. So for A levels, they might say 144 UCAS points is everything at an A, 3 A levels at an A. And a way to work that out is if you go on the UCAS website, with the website address that's at the bottom there, there's actually a little UCAS points calculator. And what you do on the drop down is you click on access to HE and you play around with where it says distinctions, merits and passes on those drop down menus. Remember, it has to add up to 45. So on here, I've put distinctions at 15. So 15 distinctions and 30 at merit. And if you can see in the bottom corner, it says 112. So that would be 112 UCAS points. If you're ever not sure what the UCAS points add up to, what grades you should be aiming for, then you can always ask your tutor. And another good thing about the UCAS point system is that it's not a set in stone method. So for instance, if you need 112 UCAS points, but one of your assignments comes in at a pass and you're just a little bit under, then you can actually make that up by getting more distinction credits and still get that combination that adds up to a specific number of points. So just keep that in mind, but I can't emphasize it enough that you really need to find out from the universities exactly what they're after. If you can get it in an email, that's even better, because then you've got it in writing from them. Okay, so just a couple of bits of terminology that you'll probably hear thrown around all day, every day when you're doing our course, is we talk about SAQs and TAQs. Now, just so you know what that means from the offset, because I'm going to talk about them quite a bit in a second, is SAQs stands for Student Assessed Questions. The TAQ stands for Tutor or Teacher Assessed Questions. And the TAQs are the actual assessment for the unit. That's what gets marks. SAQs are little questions to check your understanding. TAQs are the actual assessment for the unit. So this is how it works. Now, you only study one unit at a time. The way that you would do it is you would use that password to go to the materials section of the website, and you would click on the materials. So we'll use this as an example, interview and application skills. You click on the materials for that, and it'll open up a PDF document that asks for a password. Now, that password you'll get from your tutor, because we want to make sure that you're doing the units in the right order, because some units build on what you've learned in previous ones, so you don't want to do them in the wrong order. You use that password to open up the materials, and like I've said before, the materials are a little mini textbook that we've put together that covers everything that you need for that particular unit. Okay, so you have a really good read through the materials. Take your time, don't rush it, because everything that you need is in there, so it's worth digesting it. Now, as you go through the materials, there are these little questions that I've mentioned before, those student assessed questions, SAQs, and you answer those questions as you go. So for some of them, I think for the first one, for this interview and application skill, I think there's 3 SAQ questions. For other subjects that are much more in depth, you might get quite a few SAQ questions. And the idea of it is to just check that you understand what you're reading as you go through. Okay, so do not stress about these, because remember, they're not the actual official assessment for the unit, but you do need to answer them to make sure that you know what you're talking about. Once you've done the SAQs and you put them on the answer sheet that we've provided for you, you then upload them onto the website for us. At that point, your tutor will have a look at them and just make sure that you've answered all the questions. And we will then send you a password so that you can open up the answers for the SAQs, and you then have to mark your answers. The reason we get you to mark them is because you marking them, you have to think about, did I answer the question properly? Did I get the wrong end of the stick? Did I go into too much detail? Did I not put enough detail in? Have I not shown my understanding? So it really highlights the areas that maybe you're stronger on, but also what you're weaker on. Once you've marked them, we ask you to mark them in a different color, just so we can see bits that you might have missed out and things like that. We ask you to pop the marked version up on the website for us as well. And then us as tutors will have a look through your marked versions. We will double check, okay, that you've managed to get through the questions. So once you've done that and you've marked them and we've had a look at them, you then go on to the TAQs. And like I said before, the TAQs are the actual assessment for the unit. Now, those TAQs, they can come in lots of different formats. So they can be short answer questions. They can be complete a table. They can be put together a PowerPoint presentation, and you don't worry, you don't have to do the presentation, but we'll ask you to write down the notes that you would use if you were going to present it. So they come in lots and lots of different formats. And that TAQ document, I cannot emphasize it enough, before you put pen to paper, read the document full from start to finish, okay? Because in there it will tell you exactly what you have to do, what the word counts are, and you'll also have lots and lots of different resources that will suggest to you. So we do podcasts that we link to in the TAQ documents. We give you hyperlinks to how to do referencing to remind you how to do that. We suggest ways of structuring your answers as well. The TAQ documents are really important. So before you put pen to paper, have a really good read through it. Now, when you've done the TAQs, you pop those up on the website for us. And at that point, your tutors have got 10 working days to mark them. And we upload your feedback for you as well, which I'll tell you a bit more about later on. Whilst you're waiting for that feedback, you can get started on the next unit. And it's exactly the same structure for every single unit that you're going to do. So after interview and application skills, you would then go on to writing for academic purposes for most students. You go through the materials, you answer the SAQs and pop them up on the website. We'll give them a quick check and then we'll give you the password to mark the SAQs. You pop them up so we can just double check you're all good. And then you go on to the TAQs for the assessment, upload those. And then once that's done, you then move on to the next unit. So once you've done the SAQs and you have done the TAQs, what do you do with those files? Where do they go? Where do they live? So unless a tutor asks you to email them something, just everything as standard goes on our website. And there's a couple of places where you upload your documents. So again, you click on My Courses, and then on the drop-down menu, you've got a couple of areas to have a look at. So remember that ILP I talked about before? This is where you would upload it. So my ILPs and the SAQs that you do, they go in there. So you would click on there and it will take you to a page like this, and it looks pretty much exactly the same between the My Assessments and My ILPs and SAQs sections of the website. You go in there and you click on Upload New File. It'll ask you to name the file, and then it uploads to the website, and then your tutors can see. It's always a good idea just to drop your tutor an email, just to say I've uploaded this and it's waiting for you, just so they know. And that is where you would upload your files. So ILPs and SAQs and the marked SAQs go in that section. And then where it says My Assessments, that's where your TAQs would go. Now, naming files, always put the unit name at the start of the name as you're uploading it. So upload new file, say what you want to call it. So put unit name and then SAQs or SAQs marked, so we know there's a difference. TAQs and also those Turnitin reports. So if you can just put the unit name and then what it is, that would be amazing. And I'll give you some examples there for the intro to biology, what you can call them. If your work was not ready for marking, instead of uploading another new file, just click on the update file next to the original one, and that will just copy your new one on top of the old one. So we don't end up with a list a million miles long of different files. Feedback and resubmissions. So feedback and resubmissions. Once your work has been marked, so you've popped everything up on the website and you're just waiting to hear back from us, we upload your feedback to the website as well. Okay, so you would go onto the website, click on My Courses and My Grades and Mark Sheets, and your feedback sheet from your tutor will be waiting in there for you. I cannot shout this from the rooftops enough. Read your feedback thoroughly. Don't just look at the grade that you've got. Have a look at the feedback that we give you, because like I've said before, we will tell you what you need to do to improve on your work for the next time. Because one of the rules from Ascentis is we are not allowed to say what grade your piece of work is before you hand it in. We can look at little sections and we can say whether you'll meet the criteria for a pass, but we can't say do this for a merit or do that for a distinction. But what we can do is on your feedback for your assignments, we can say, right, you've done this really well. In your next assignment, make sure that you do this and you should improve your grade. I cannot emphasize the feedback we give you is the most precious thing that you'll get whilst you're on the course. So please make sure that you really thoroughly read your feedback. Because we're not in a classroom, our feedback sheets are in lots and lots of detail, because that's our chance to tell you what you can do. Now, another thing to keep in mind as well is, what if you don't quite pass the first time that you hand something in? First thing, do not panic. Okay, if you don't pass the first time, then we call it a resubmission, which means that you get another opportunity to hand your work in. And as long as you have handed your work in on time, then you can still get a merit or a distinction grade, even if it takes you 2 goes to get there. And a resubmission, it's normally because you've missed something out. And normally it's not a big thing. It will be for one of the assignments that you do, one of the assessment criteria is make sure you come up with an appropriate title for your research project, which is literally 1 sentence. So if you have missed out that 1 sentence, all you need to do for your resubmission is to add that sentence in. Okay, so do not panic, because you can still add that sentence in, take you 5 minutes, resubmit it, and still get a distinction on a piece of work. For those of you that haven't been in education for a while, you might find your first couple of things are a resubmission. That's because you haven't been in education for a while. So don't stress. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get the grades you need to get into uni. It just means you're getting used to being back in education, and then you'll fly the further you go on. If you do have a resubmission, you can only make the changes that we've specified in the feedback. So if it's you've missed out a sentence, the feedback will say add in a sentence. You can't change anything else, just add that sentence in. It might be add a paragraph of evaluation in which case that's all that you can do. Once you've done the changes that we've said, we ask you to email it to us just to double check that you've met the criteria for a pass. Once that's all good, you then will be told you can upload it to the website for us. Your tutor will then have 10 working days to mark it, remark it, and put your feedback up, just as before. And it doesn't show up anywhere either. So if you have a resubmission, it won't show on your certificate that it was a resubmission. And that is the point. If you do get a resubmission, that's where there might be a little bit of overlap between the units. So we say do one at a time. But if you do have to go back to a previous unit to do a resubmission, that's absolutely fine. That's where there might be a little bit of overlap. The only time that your work gets capped at a pass is if you miss a deadline. So when we set you a deadline, and we'll email you the password for the TAQs, and we'll say, this is your deadline to hand it in. Now, if you can't make that deadline, don't panic, because all you need to do is just get in contact with your tutor and say, can I have another week on this assignment? Because life's just gone a bit mad. Work have called me in for 3 more shifts that I wasn't expecting. Can I have a bit longer? So just drop us an email before the deadline passes and just say, can you have a bit longer? And that is absolutely fine. That's not a problem. But please make sure you ask for it before the deadline passes. Otherwise, your work, even if it's a distinction, would be capped at a pass. One thing that I really want to emphasize to you guys is our Facebook group. That is just for students. Now, doing distance learning, it's very, very different from being in a classroom where you get to chat with your peers, bounce ideas off of each other, because you're online and you're on your own. And it can feel a bit lonely because the people around you, your friends and family, they don't know what you're doing and where you're up to. So what we have is a Facebook group that is just for students, okay? So it's not the one we use for advertising. This is a special one that is just for students. You will get asked some questions just so we can double check you are a student before you get added in. We've got over 2,700 learners in there at the moment. Some of them are old students who have just completed. I did see a post the other day from a student saying that they have just received their official registration, that they are now officially a midwife with the Nursing and Midwifery Council after completing their degree and doing our Access Diploma. So that was lovely. So the Facebook group, if you search for distancelearningcentre.com and then in brackets official, you will find this group. And there's so much going on in that group. So at the moment, there's lots of new students in there saying hello. You might want to be a study buddy with somebody. So if you say, I'm doing the Access to HE business course, is there anybody else studying it or starting right now? Shall we be study buddies and help each other? Some students sell their old textbooks on there once they've finished a subject. Others, you might need volunteers for some of the research projects that you might end up doing as part of your pathway, and getting other students on here to do it is a great place to ask. You might chat about different sources that you've used for your work. So has anybody found a great website for homeostasis in biology? Another really important thing that people talk about is when the uni start doing interviews, what kinds of questions did they ask? What kind of things did you have to do? Was it a group interview? Did you have to talk to previous service users and things like that? So interview chatter, that's always a very interesting one. So in there, you will find lots and lots of students that you can chat to. You can also see what our faces look like. That picture at the top is us lot. But one little word of caution is if you have any questions about the TAQs, about the assessments, I please would ask you to email your tutor instead of asking on the Facebook group, okay? And it's not because the students don't know what they're talking about, but the last thing that we want is for you to be told something wrong about an assessment and to miss out on a grade that you were after. That's the last thing that I'm going to talk about in terms of the course induction and the things that you need to know at the start. You've always got your tutor that you can ask questions to, so thank you for joining us tonight.